The first time Jason ever saw a Zothorian, it was through the scope of his sniper rifle. The alien, with its sickly gray skin and multi-jointed limbs, was leading a raiding party towards the human outpost on Arcadia -9. They had underestimated humans. Again, the Zothorian looked cocky, as if victory was inevitable. But Jason knew better. He'd been into many battles with these creatures, and he developed a particular method of dealing with them. A method that had earned him a name among the Zothorians, the Blade Bearer. Jason didn't favor firearms as much as the knife strapped to his side. The one his father had given him, a family heirloom made of Terran steel, razor sharp, and engraved with the words, "In the heart of the storm, carve your path." The outpost was under siege, and Jason had been sent as part of a small unit to hold the line until reinforcements arrived. The Zothorians were tough, but not unbreakable. Their advantage was in numbers and brute force, not in subtlety or strategy. That's where Jason came in. He had studied them, learned their weaknesses. He knew how they fought, how they reacted to injury. So, when the Zothorian leader advanced, his squad ready to cut through the outpost's defenses, Jason moved like a shadow. The knife glinted in the moonlight as he slipped past the alien sentries. In the chaos of war, no one noticed him until it was too late. One Zothorian down, 2, 3. The blade hummed through the air, a dance of death that was swift and silent. Jason's movements were precise, his strikes lethal. He aimed for the joints in their armor, the soft tissue beneath their hard exoskeletons. It wasn't long before the Zothorian leader found himself alone, surrounded by the bodies of his comrades. That's when Jason stepped out of the shadows, knife in hand, blood dripping from the blade. The Zothorian growled in its native tongue, backing away. Jason smiled coldly. "You come on, but I'll always find you." The alien turned to flee, but Jason was faster. With one swift motion, the knife buried itself into the back of the alien's neck, severing its spinal cord. The creature fell with a heavy thud. Jason retrieved his knife, wiping it clean on the alien's armor. He looked up at the sky. The reinforcements just now arriving. "You remember this," he muttered, sheathing his blade. "A knife to remember." The patient man. Patience was a virtue, and no one knew that better than Sergeant Daniel Dan Brooks. He was the kind of man who could sit in one place for hours, waiting, watching, listening. His fellow soldiers called him the patient man, not just because of his calm demeanor, but because of his ability to outlast the enemy in any situation. It wasn't always easy. Dan had seen his fair share of battle skirmishes against the Kraktal, the Dralax, and even the Zothorians, but his most recent assignment was something else entirely. The humans had finally established a foothold on the far edge of the Andromeda Galaxy, and Dan had been deployed to monitor one of the outer colonies. The colony was peaceful to peaceful, and that made Dan suspicious. For weeks, he had been tracking an anomaly in the colony's power grid. It wasn't much, just a slight fluctuation, but it was enough to make his instincts twitch. Something was wrong. He reported it to command, but they dismissed it as a technical glitch. "Nothing to worry about," they said, "just a routine malfunction." But Dan knew better. He waited, watching the power fluctuations, watching the people around him. He noticed the small changed people disappearing for hours at a time, only to reappear as if nothing had happened. Supplies going missing, shadows moving where there shouldn't have been shadows. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Dan Saturday alone in the colony's observation tower. His keen eyes scanned the horizon, looking for any sign of trouble. The wind was still, the air heavy with anticipation. He could feel it. Something was coming. And then, just as the last light faded from the sky, he saw a small group of figures moving toward the colony. Too coordinated to be anything but a threat. They were Dralax, notorious for their stealthy infiltrations. Dan didn't move. He just watched, his breath steady, his heartbeat calm. He'd been waiting for this. The Dralax thought they were unseen, that they could slip into the colony and sabotage it from within. But they didn't know about the patient man. He waited until they were just at the perimeter, then pressed a button on his comms. "Command, this is Sergeant Brooks. We've got company." The reply was immediate. "Roger that." "Sergeant, reinforcements are on the way." Dan didn't respond. He didn't need reinforcements. He needed time. He watched as the Daleks approached the colony's defenses, their cloaking devices making them nearly invisible. Nearly, but not to Dan. He had memorized every inch of the terrain, every shadow, every detail. And then, just as the Daleks began to breach the perimeter, Dan made his move. With a single, precise shot, he took down the lead Dalek. Chaos erupted among the infiltrators. They hadn't expected resistance so soon. One by one, Dan picked them off, his sniper rifle firing with deadly accuracy. Each shot was deliberate, measured. There was no rush, no panic, just patience. By the time reinforcements arrived, the Daleks were either dead or retreating. Dan lowered his rifle, watching as the remaining enemies disappeared into the night. He stood there for a moment, listening to the silence, the tension draining from his body. "Sergeant Brooks, you did it again," one of his fellow soldiers remarked as they joined him in the tower. Dan smiled slightly, his gaze still on the horizon. "Patience, my friend, it's all about patience." HFY humanity. Yeah. Stories often highlight human resilience, ingenuity, and sheer determination in the face of overwhelming odds. Both enough to remember and the patient then showcase these traits, with Jason's swift, deadly efficiency and Dan's calm, calculated patience proving once again that humanity is a force to be reckoned with. The reinforcements that landed on Archaea-9 were a mix of Marines and medics. They swarmed the battlefield, securing the area and tending to the wounded. Jason stood on the ridge overlooking the scene, his knife still in its sheath, resting a hand on the hilt. He had done his part, but something didn't sit right with him. The Zothurians shouldn't have attacked so recklessly. They were usually methodical, strategic, never committing to a direct assault unless they had an advantage. This felt off. As Jason prepared to return to the command post, a faint hum filled the air, barely noticeable under the noise of the soldiers below. His instincts, sharpened over years of war, went into overdrive. He drew his knife and crouched, scanning the horizon. There, in the distance, a shimmer in the air. Jason cursed under his breath. Zothurian cloaking tech. With a surge of adrenaline, he sprinted down the ridge, heading toward the shimmer. His pulse quickened, but his mind was cold, focused. He wasn't going to let them slip away, not this time. As he closed in on the cloaked figures, he could make out their distorted Chepashtu Zothurians, moving stealthily toward the command center. One of them was carrying a large device strapped to its back. Jason's eyes narrowed. It was some kind of bomb. He didn't have time to think. He launched himself at the nearest Zothurian, driving his knife into its side before it could react. The alien screeched in pain, its cloaking field flickering and failing as it crumbled to the ground. The second Zothurian turned, but Jason was already on him. A quick twist of the blade, and the second alien fell silent. Breathing heavily, Jason stood over the bodies, the knife in his hand once again coated in blood. He kicked the bomb device away and knelt beside the first Zothurian. Its white, alien eyes stared back at him, full of hatred and something else. "Why?" Jason muttered, more to himself than to the dying creature. "What's your plan?" The Zothurian coughed, black blood dribbling from his mouth. It spoke in broken Terran, its voice a rasping whisper. "Not over. More coming. You humans will burn." Jason's heart sank as the alien collapsed, dead. He looked up at the sky, where the stars twinkled innocently in the vastness of space. More were coming. He wiped his knife clean and sheathed it once again. The war wasn't over. In fact, it seemed like it was just beginning. The patient man continued. Dan Brooks wasn't the kind of man who liked to draw attention to himself. He'd done his job on the colony, taken out the Daleks with precision and patience. But now that reinforcements had arrived, he let the others handle the cleanup. His mind was already on the next move. Command had praised him, called him a hero, but Dan didn't see it that way. He hadn't won any grand battle, just bought the colony a little more time. He knew that more Daleks were out there, and that they wouldn't stop until they had accomplished whatever mission they had in mind. The colony's governor, an older man with graying hair and a stern demeanor, approached Dan as he packed up his gear in the observation tower. "Sergeant Brooks," the governor said, his voice full of gratitude, "I can't thank you enough. Without you, the colony might have been overrun." Dan gave a sly nod, but his gaze remained on the horizon. "I appreciate it, Governor, but this isn't over." The governor frowned. "What do you mean? You stopped them?" "For now," Dan replied, "but they'll be back. The Drawlacks don't give up that easily. We need to fortify the perimeter, increase surveillance. They're not done with us." The governor looked concerned but nodded. "I'll take your advice seriously, Sergeant. You've earned our trust." Dan didn't respond. His instincts were telling him something darker was on the horizon. Later that night, after most of the colony had settled into an uneasy calm, Dan Saturday alone in the tower once more, his sniper rifle resting beside him. The stars above were serene, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And then, just before midnight, it happened. The ground trembled, ever so slightly, and a low rumble echoed in the distance. Dan's eyes widened as he grabbed his rifle and zoomed in on the source of the disturbance. What he saw made his blood run cold. A massive Drawlak warship was descending from orbit, its hull bristling with weapons and drop pods. This wasn't a stealthy infiltration anymore. This was a full-scale invasion. Dan immediately sounded the alarm, his calm demeanor never faltering. Even as the colony's defenses were scrambled, soldiers and colonists rushed to their positions, preparing for the fight of their lives. As the warship loomed overhead, Dan took a deep breath and steadied his rifle. He had been waiting for this. He had known it was coming. And now, as the first drop pods hit the ground and Drawlak soldiers poured out, he was ready. He lined up his shot, aimed at the lead Drawlak, and squeezed the trigger. The war had begun, and Dan Brooks, the patient man, would be its silent, steadfast sentinel. A knife to remember. The patient man epilogue. The battles on Arcadia Minus 9 and the colony were just the beginning. Humanity was spread thin across the galaxy, but they had something the alien invaders didn't understand: resolve. Soldiers like Jason and Dan weren't fighting for conquest or domination. They were fighting for survival, for their families, their friends, their home. Jason's knife became a symbol of human tenacity, a legend told among the Zothurians as a warning not to underestimate the blade bearer. And Dan's patience, his unshakable calm, inspired countless others to stand their ground, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The galaxy was vast, and the enemies of humanity were many, but humans had always been good at one thing: enduring. And as long as there were men like Jason and Dan, the galaxy would remember that humanity didn't just survive, they thrived.